enjoying that a little bit too much. Anyways, so how's it going, everybody? Good evening, well, good night for some of you. For us today, we are reading the Book of Maccabees. I've said before that it's in the Vulgate and I believe the Septuagint, but I have my own extract, a King James version, compiled by Dore Rams. So, the general gist of the Book of Maccabees, and this one doesn't really have a synopsis or forward by the translator. Well, because it's already pre-translated, it's a King James version. So you could find in most of the bigger versions of the full Old and New Testaments that the Catholics use. But for the sake of this, we're going to go ahead and give you guys a lowdown. Okay, there we go. So the Book of Maccabees is talking about the family of the Maccabees, starting with Matthew, or Matthias, and leading with his sons, the sons of Maccabee: Jonathan, Eliezer, Judas, Simon, John. So when you see people with various names of like Judas, Simon, John, Eliezer, Jonathan, things like that, repeated throughout the New Testament, these people are referencing this. Like, a lot of the names in the New Testament are referencing the Book of Maccabees because this was their modern day, like, civil war. This was their history. This happened only like 150 years before Christ happened. Look at this. Harold is at the time of Christ. So you have literally 100 years leading up to Christ in history. So when people say, oh, we don't really have a way of keeping consistency of what happened between the Bible and stuff, we do. We do. It's called the Book of Maccabees. I think there's a couple other books that are actually considered in between the second exile and the coming of Christ, the first coming of Christ. So in the Book of Maccabees, we are talking about a revolution led by the family called the Maccabees. They were a group of Jewish rebels who controlled Judea, and they rose largely as a reaction to the forced oppression of the Hellenistic Roman Empire. This is before Rome was Rome, in the sense of them starting to adopt Latin, which was a hybrid language fused between the many different provinces that they controlled in order to basically create a modified language that everybody could speak. It was basically a trade language. But Greek was originally what Rome exalted over most of the provinces that they took over, to various effects. So, when we're getting into the idea of the Maccabees, and again, you can look this up on Wikipedia, that's why I brought it up, so you guys can know, you can just look this up real quick. So the idea of the Maccabees is that this is the story of Hanukkah. This is also the story of how the Jewish people were able to reclaim the temple when it was taken over and defiled by the Greek Romans. They say Greeks in this one, but that's because at this time they were just called Greeks. So yeah, it's called the Maccabean Revolt. There's multiple books of the Maccabees. I believe I have the full compiling of all of them into this collection. Yeah, it's the books of the Maccabees, so of course I have all of them. But we're just going to go through it book from book. So we're probably just going to go through book 1 right now, and then we'll go through book 2, and then book 3, and we'll talk about how this references modern day history through memetics. So, actually, let's go ahead and, screw it. You guys know what memetics are. You guys know what memes are. If you don't, then I can't help you. You can just look that up on Google. So, let's get crack-a-lacking, everybody. So, the Book of the Maccabees. And it happened. After that, Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Cherem, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, and he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. Now, Alexander the Great is considered one of the many different proto-examples of an antichrist. On top of that, he is known as the forerunner of the modern Roman Empire, though They held themselves back to Romulus and Remus, but the general idea is that Alexander the Great had a huge influence on Roman culture, and Greek culture too. So, for the idea of the Greeks and who they worshipped before they kind of merged into more of their Roman Empire identity, I would say that this is their forerunner mythology story. Alexander the Great, he comes and he conquers all of the East and all of the West until he is smitten by a curse of the gods, in a sense. So, when you're talking about the rise of Alexander the Great, you're talking about the rise of a great power that comes to rule over many different powers. So, this power slews the kings or the nations of the earth and puts them into dominion, and went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him. There was peace for war. Whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. So his heart was lifted up, his empire was lifted up. The empire of Alexander, the spirit of Alexander was lifted up. And he gathered the mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. So this is the rising of the empire, the world empire, the new world order, wink wink nudge nudge. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. This is the death of the old world, the old things, the apparent wound. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth. So these are people who share the same spirit, they share the same mindset, they've worked for the same ends from the beginning of their birth as a nation. Their seeds led to their fruit of this Antichrist spirit rising over their people and over their population, and parted his kingdom among him while he was yet still alive. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like the English, like the Romans, like so many other of these Antichrist mimetic empires that rise time and time again. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves, so that their sons after them many years. And evils were multiplied in the earth. So after the death of this Alexander spirit, this Roman spirit, this British spirit, all the nations that they have influenced now crown themselves little empires, little tributaries, and wars are fought for their honor. They try to compile upon themselves rule. Evils were multiplied in the earth, much like World War I and II, much like the last 100 years of our lives. And there came out of them a wicked root. And remember in the Bible, a root bears a tree, which bears branches, which bears fruit. So a root is talking about the beginning of a people, the beginning of a legacy, the beginning of a spirit that leads a sea, a mass of people to act in a way that they are not actually conscious of, but is ingrained into them, into their instinct, their corrupted instincts. So out of them came a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes. Look that up. It's pretty hilarious what it means. Son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Now remember, Rome is a place, a stronghold. It's a strong nation. It's a strong kingdom. So he's held hostage in a strong kingdom for most of his youth. But then he was raised as the king or the emperor over this province, these imperial provinces of Proto-Rome, the Rome that we talk about in the Bible at least. So Antiochus, he gets a stick up his butt. In those days, there went out of Isreal wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we have departed from them, from the heathens, since they've separated from the heathens in order to preserve their national identity and the integrity of their people and their sense of individual identity away from what the world is trying to force them to conform to, they've had much sorrow. Oh, We should just join with those who are unsaved because, Christianity needs to go and get a new leg up its foot. Yeah, I think that's the right way of saying that. Anyways, so this device pleased them well. This idea that, Antiochus, when he rose, he was seeking to control all the provinces and conform them into the Greek image. So for them, this is fine. Cool. We got a strong world emperor who's creating peace. He's now going to rule over us. We'll have greater trade. We'll have greater alliances. We'll have free immigration. All that stuff that they hit us with now, yeah, this has happened before. There's nothing new under the sun, says Proverbs. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went into the king of Isreal, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Whereupon, so these are believers, supposedly true Jews, who are like a true Jewish king who is like, yeah, go, make yourselves like the heathen, worship other gods. So, whereupon they built a place of exercise, or religious exercise, at Jerusalem, at the abode of peace, at their national headquarters, according to the customs, not of the Jews, but of those who knew God not, the heathens, and made themselves uncircumcised, both of soul and of flesh, and forsook the holy covenant of their people, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. So they didn't just leave their God, they didn't just leave their faith. They took up the faiths, the history, the identity of the Greeks, and made Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have dominion over 2 realms. So now it's not enough to have God's people. Now he must go to those who were willing to stand by while God's people were forced under a thumb. Oh, it's okay that the Jews are forced to move on. There's always been a problem underneath their thumb. That's what the Egyptians probably thought. But now the Egyptians are being submitted and changed to the Greek image. And the Egyptians probably weren't happy about that either. Wherefore he entered unto Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him, and fled, and many were wounded to death. So, after all the stuff that the heathen nations say, oh, we're the most biggest, we're the powers, our gods are going to protect us, we got all this stuff. After Israel falls, what happens to them too? They topple over too. They flee. Their leaders flee. Their leaders flee and leave the people to fight the war. And the people are subsumed under warfare into the world empire. Thus, they, Antiochus, got the strong cities in the land of Egypt. And that's called the land of the undead. Remember, Egypt is a place where people who are asleep, people who are ready and entombed, crossing over the great river, are living. So he takes over the land of the abode of peace. He takes over the believers. He takes over the unbelievers. And he took the spoils thereof of Egypt. He took all of their gold, everything religious, everything of their people, and he basically subsumed it into Rome. And after that, after Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. So now, those Jews who were willing to compromise and sell their people out, the conservatives, the traditionalists, the people who are refusing to move with the times, those who sold them out, now it's their turn. So then he comes in and he subsumes them. And entered proudly into the sanctuary after he killed everybody. Killed all of their armies, stopped everything. You aren't allowed to worship, you aren't allowed to do anything. This is Antiochus. Mofo Antiochus. You people don't understand, this man was a big deal at the time of Jesus. To say that somebody was an Antiochus was a big deal. To say that Rome still has the spirit of Antiochus was a big deal. That's why the Zealots were still active. That's why the Essenes just left Israel at this point. This is when the Essenes were just like, now we're out, peace, screw this, we're done. So entered proudly into the sanctuary, Antiochus did, and took away the golden altar, and the candlestick of light, and all of the vessels there. And so he took the presence, the flesh, the entire temple of God, and he just thrashed it. He removed everything but the structure of God. And afterwards, not only that, he takes the table of showbread, so the sacrifice. He takes the pouring vessels, which are used again for sacrificing, for relieving the sins of the people. He took the vials and the usures of gold, so all of the worth and the wealth they'd been reserving and sharing around the nation of Israel was taken. The veil was taken, so he took the actual representation of what God was in the world. He took the crown that was supposed to go over the king. I also think he took the crowns that they wore for priests, and the gold ornaments, because again, all the gold ornaments include the crowns, which were before the temple, and all he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels, and he took the hidden treasures which he found. Everything of the faith he took. They took it all. And when he had taken all away, he went unto his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoke very proudly. Therefore there was great mourning in Israel, in every place where they were, where the Greeks were. So that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Much like modern times, much like how this UN is seeking to establish a world peace through force, and through forced reformation of entire nations and their cultures and identities and people, and even biology and science itself is being reformed to the UN's image, to sate their whim. Much like the spirit of Antiochus. The only thing that stops them from being more powerful is the clay and iron that they're made of. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, grieving, and he and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness, grieving. The land was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob, the supplanter, was covered with confusion, with Babel. So they were forced into a state of Babel, into the state of, we don't know how to worship God. We don't know how to worship or follow faith. We don't even know how to have a religion. We don't know how to bring people to faith. Nobody has hope. We're just giving over. Everything's gone. Our nation's submitted into the world empire, and you know what? America's done. That's basically the same mentality that they were at back then. Everybody was in confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king of Israel... after 2 years fully expired, the king of Israel, sorry, I said that wrong, sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah and to the cities of praise, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude. So, everybody's in confusion. The only thing they have left to do is just to praise God. If they don't know what else to do in this confusion, at least they're praising God. And they're coming into praising God. And you know what the king does? Be a part of this world empire? Decides to tax them. Decides to take their tithes. Decides to remove their religious, wealth. And spake peaceable words unto them. But all was deceit. Remember that, people, during these times, which we were told by Christ were going to be extremely deceitful. They speak peaceful words unto us, which are full of deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city and smote it very sore, and destroyed much of the people of Israel. So as soon as they get you where they want you, they beat you into submission so that you will never have a chance of ever being able to say a damn thing against what they're going to do to your people now. This is the whole idea of history is written by the victors. Today's oppressed become tomorrow's oppressors. It's another quote that I like pulling from the annals of Anon. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof of every side. Again, he rewrote the history of the people by removing their heritage. But the women and children took they captive and possessed the cattle. So he takes everyone captive. Then builded they the city of the beloved of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. So they make themselves a strong defense, a strong structure that cannot be penetrated by the believers, cannot be penetrated by outside forces to then change what they're doing to the faith within. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. So again, now that they got the believers removed, now they're going to put their worshipers, their people in. And now no longer are true Christians actual Christians. Now it's the sinners, those who drink, who have sex, who pillage and rape and murder the world. It's those who are true Christians. It's that whole aspect of it. And they stored it also with armor and victuals, and when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Isreal. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those who were born in her, and her own children left her. Much like what happened in our modern times. God, actually, yeah. The Abomination of Desolation. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning. Her Sabbaths, the day of rest, were into reproach, her honor into contempt. So the idea is everything's thrown upside down because of this takeover. Everything that was holy is now sin. People who were now considered, good are now evil. What was once not racist is now racist. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning of Isreal. So Israel is referred to as both a he and a she in this nation. So that's kind of getting down to the idea that the people are the nation, the physical embodiment, the he, but the spirit of a nation is the she, the bride. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. All should be one people? Spirit of Antichrist. I mean, geez, it's basically, you can rearrange the terms to basically say Antichrist. So, I mean, how do you guys not pick up on this stuff? It's only because you guys never read it, despite saying that, because I don't believe in Christianity. I would rather go and read the Apocrypha. Well, here you go. Are you reading it? None of you do, or else you would believe. As soon as I started reading some of the Apocrypha, I started to believe even harder. I couldn't run away from the Bible. The Bible is the light work. The Bible is the stuff that's easy to learn. You want to learn some hard stuff? Dive into the Dead Sea Scrolls. Then find yourself unable to go backwards. Because everything that's happening now, that stuff leaves no stone unturned. This at least allows you a little bit of mystery. It allows you a little bit of working out your own future. The other stuff just tells you what's going to happen, and we keep falling into the patterns that they straight up tell us we're falling into. It's this that tells us we got time to change things. It gives hope in the Bible. You guys who do not believe, do not look or search earnestly, and thus you never find. That's why you are in the positions you guys are in. It's not because we don't prove things to you right. We've had to prove. Every time we try to prove things to you guys, we learn more and believe more and become more fanatical. That's the problem. By the process of apologetics, we prove our faith more through discernment, through constantly trying to challenge ourselves to figure out how to better evangelize to others. That is our proving process. There is no proving process for the atheist because the atheist is running away most of their life. I have hardly met an atheist who digs in. They become pagans usually before they become true atheists. They become agnostics before they become true atheists and remain that for the rest of their lives. Atheism is a phase for most earnest people looking for the truth. If you remain atheist, then it's because you're not searching for truth out there. You found truth in here, which is fine. You got truth here, which is fine. But you ain't got it up there. And you have nothing to call from up there. So that's why you use things around here and your magical little science blocks, which only exist because there's an order to the universe and a structure to the universe, which was provided from up there, to basically prove to yourselves that you only need to focus over here. That's fine. That's you. Don't force the rest of us to stay in your little box because you all are afraid of up there because other people down here failed to communicate what's actually up there because they suck. We all suck. You suck too. You never escaped from that. You just hid from it. This is one of the wonderful things about us human beings. We can run away from it as long as we can. We still suck. The only way to stop sucking is to accept that all of this is important. So then when we bring it all in and we understand everything is part of each other, that's how we truly stop sucking, because we are able to acknowledge, like, this is what I'm doing. This is how I am affecting others. This is how I'm affecting up there. Even though my actions here aren't acknowledged by others. That stuff is important because even if you are the only one aware of what's going on around you, it matters because that's still choice. That's still free will being enacted. Just because you deny the free will of others doesn't mean that you aren't still acting on free will. You just denied it to everybody else but yourself. So your inner truth can deny other people the truth, but not just the truth, their truth. So that's the problem with relativism. I was going to say relative truth, but relativism is an actual philosophy. The idea that everything is just to be figured out during the course of your life. You don't need to think about the abstract things. That stuff is fine. It's just you're going to close off opportunities for others here the more we focus here. Because we're not focusing up there, which brings us over to see everything down from a topographical perspective. Anyways, where was I? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, it's because I was on a different page. Okay, that's why I couldn't find where I was at. Insomuch they happened to Judaism. Yeah, I lost my train. Oh, yeah, there we go. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. Sorry, the one world government thing kind of pissed me off. Sorry, I got off track. Sorry, Lord. So, that all should be one people. And everyone should leave his laws, their own customs, their own national constitutions, so that all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of this king. Ye, many also of Isreal, consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, the cities of praise, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. Or what? Well, I imagine you learn what. You guys got smoted. And forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice. And Antiochus forbid burnt offerings and the sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days. So he deliberately made sure that everything that made Judaism was profaned. Same thing with Christians. Everything that you guys think, even with a liberal Christianity, which has already made a lot of leeway in order to make themselves more acceptable to the world, you think you're really going to be allowed to have what little bit of Christ you have left? What little bit of the Bible you have left? No, they're going to take your Bible. They're going to force you to censor the Bible. They're going to force you to censor your faith more. They're going to take your tithes, or they'll take your 501c status. You're not going to have a way of evading once you get rid of the radicals. Not everybody's the Westro Baptist Church, you jerks. A lot of us just know what's happening. We see the Spirit for what it is because we came from that side, a lot of us. I actually think a lot of the sinners who have come to faith in the last decade, they're the ones who are more active against this threat than the saved people. You guys seem more willing to just let your own sell you out, while the rest of us are like, no, save yourselves. We need to get out. We need to do something. And that's what's happening here. as he's doing this, there's a resistance. And he's smoting it all along. They're not even talking about the resistance because they're not even allowed to affect anything. They're being censored, silenced. So they polluted the sanctuary and the holy people, the people of God, and set up altars and groves and chapels, idols, and sacrificed swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised. So basically, they've done so much to corrupt the people that the people are uncircumcised, their children are uncircumcised. At birth, their souls are uncircumcised, their flesh is uncircumcised, and they make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, much like what happened in America, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of this king Antiochus, he said they should die. Much like how many people want the right to die. You sell out your own. Watch out. Who is the God and the king you're helping? Many of you guys seem so content that we're worshiping Trump. Who is the God you're really worshiping? Because it seems to me like your one world order pushing through, oh, we should just get along with all faiths. We should just all just submit to everything that the nation tells us we need to do in order to make Christianity acceptable to the masses. Yeah, it seems to me like that's your spirit right there. I'm just telling you like I read it. I can see in here. In the self-same manner wrote he, Antiochus, to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all of the people of his kingdoms, commanding the cities, and also the city of Judah, to sacrifice city by city. So now the one world order is starting the one world religion. The false prophet and the false king are both sitting on the throne. The other kings are lined up to serve him. Then many of the people were gathered unto him, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, so that they committed evils in the land, and drove Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. The virgin flees into the wilderness to bear a child through tumultuous labor because the world seeks to persecute her. Jesus wasn't pulling this out of his butt. He was saying this is memetics. This was the procession of a theme that was going to foresee the end of time. And here's how you guys stop it. The Book of Maccabees. So if you guys want to go and ignore the Bible, how about you read something else then? Maybe you'll find some answers. The answers are here of how we stop this. Now the 15th day of the month Calsu, in the 145th year, they set up abominations of desolation, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Book of Daniel, Isaiah, upon the altar, and burned idol altars throughout the city of praise on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. So they're lifting up praise to false spirits. They're bringing out demons, fallen angels. They're basically calling upon the forces of Satan, of the adversary, to dwell in the places of praise, in the place of Christian homes, of Israeli homes. What they Israelis did, we will do. So we're now going to bring in these idols, these pagan gods into our homes. We're going to start exalting these false spirits up into our own homes and over our nations, like we're doing now. Like, do you guys sense the urgency? The urgency of these kind of things. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. They're burning the Bible. They're burning the Torah, the law, the book of the God's word. They're straight up just chaining God's word now, much like they did in the USSR. And whosoever was found with any book of the Testament, or if they committed to the law, the king's commandment was that they should be put him to death. Much like they did after the Bar Kokhba revolt, where they burned all Hebrew texts, regardless of whether it was Christian or Jewish, hence why we don't have Hebrew versions of the New Testament. It's not because it wasn't existing for 60 to 100 years, you idiots. It's because everything that existed before 200 years was burned to the damn ground by the Romans so they could change history and censor everything. That's why Christianity existed only in North Africa for the first 300 years of its existence before it was forcibly subsumed into the Roman Empire and forcibly changed into Catholicism. Do you guys study history? No. This is the frustration I have with people who renounce the faith. People do not care about what they renounce. They think they found the answers because they found a little bit of a conundrum in the Bible because they didn't read everything through. Or they want to go and read alternate books without reading all the ones that are actually biblically related to everything that's going on. Just because you read the Book of Enoch does not mean you can renounce all of the Old Testament. How about you read this in order to understand why the Book of Enoch even matters still? Why even Jesus references the Book of Enoch in the New Testament. If you want to go and use the Apocrypha in order to deny the Bible, do it. But you better freaking read the damn stuff so you understand why it's still in the Bible and why the Bible references it. None of this stuff is inconsistent. They didn't lie to anybody. You all just don't do your freaking studying, and you will listen to anybody else but do the listening and studying yourself to the Word of God. That's on you, not on us. That's not our short-sightedness. This is on us for not digging our foot in your butts and telling you like it is. This is on you guys to look for the things you renounce and actually study and find out if you're truly renouncing God for genuine reasons. A lot of you aren't. And that's important because you will be moderates while you allow horrible things to happen because it's not your skin in the game. Well, it will be. This shows that it will be once the Spirit's done with getting rid of the people who are in the way of stealing your soul, your freedom, and your futures, and your hopes and dreams, and controlling them in order to control everything that you become from then on. And we're already in the system, baby. We're already in the matrix, baby. So yeah, they're burning people who have legit Bibles, and anybody who has a translation that's approvable, that's, politically correct, those are the ones who, are allowed to go and exist because they took the King's Bible, the Bible of the UN. Thus did they by their authority unto the Israels every month to as many as were found in the city. So every month, every holy day, every new moon, they'd sit there and kick the crap out of everybody who tried to worship God. Huh. Much like in the times of Daniel. Huh. Much like what happened in Isaiah. Huh. Much like what happened plenty of times throughout the Old Testament and New Testament. Almost like memetics is a thing that happens in his existence in the beginning of time. And it's basically our modern way of understanding the pattern of reality that reveals itself to us through things like prophecy. All memetics is proto-prophecy, the revelation of truth that people are not willing to acknowledge. That's all prophecy is telling the truth that people don't want to hear. That's being a prophet. Not telling the future, not telling people their fortune. It's telling people the truth about themselves and about the world and just not sugarcoating it. Prophecy does have futuristic elements, but that's because if you tell people the truth, you can usually predict how things are going to work out if everybody's acknowledging what's reality. When everybody lives in reality, nobody's purposely trying to fudge things up and create babble, then usually you can predict how things are going to end out. It's the only way that demons are able to do their act. They are able to predict things because human beings as a mass are extremely predictable. You scare us, we do one thing. You hit us with the Z. Literally, demons just play around with us like we play with pets. They don't respect you. They don't treat you like your equal. They treat you like pets. Unless they're trying to breed with you in order to create more of themselves than your cattle to them. Cattle that they treat nicely because you're nice fancy cattle. You're a poodle. And you know how people treat poodles? Like their children? The only one who really treats us with respect while treating us like children is God, and that's because he's willing to both stand up to us while also being willing to stand down to us. He's willing to let us fall on our own sword while allowing us to go and wave our sword in the first place. The others are just freaking controlling everything we do, and they don't want you to change things. You guys have never lived in an oppressive nation, so everything that's happening is all freaking a big deal to you guys. Well, it's not to most people who came from disorder, who came from nations that fell apart throughout the whole 80s, 90s, and 20th century. Yeah, they know the deal. A lot of them, especially the Christians, of this mindset. So anyways, at which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. Ooh, and remember, women, the virgins, the 12 virgins, the women represent the church. So any church that circumcises the spirit, and most especially the flesh of the believers, any church that creates true believers, yeah, they're dead. They're killed. They're destroyed. They're definitely not going to be allowed by the state to run. They are terrorists. They are radicals. They are threats to the nation. Any influence they have needs to be stopped. And they hang the infants, the believers, by their necks, and rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them, so the churches are gone. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. So those who refuse to submit, they are all getting killed. They would rather die, that they might not be defiled with meats, that they might not profane the Holy Covenant, so that then they died. This is why even in Jesus' time, there's a hesitation to fleshly disobey the Old Testament. Even though Christ came back and said, no, you're not living under the Antichrist right now. You will be when I leave, but right now, when you have the spirit of me, you live in my kingdom. You are not in the time and space of earth. I removed you from the cycle, from the mimetic pattern. Antiochus can't affect you when my spirit's over you, so you're free. You can finally do the things that you want to do. It's not mean that we can worship these gods and eat these meats for the sake of worshiping these gods. It just means meat's meat. Iron's iron. The things we build and the technologies we make are pure. Being Christian doesn't mean you have to be against science. Being Christian doesn't mean you have to be against technology. It means you have to make sure the technology and the science you make is sanctified, and that the priest, and I mean scientists, who you have, because all scientists are really priests who use magic to basically create happiness in our lives. Yeah, so the priest of science, they need to be sanctified by Christ. And if they're sanctified by Christ, then their science is fine. They're not going around trying to destroy the Bible with everything they do. And a lot of the people who created the sciences weren't trying to destroy the Bible or remove the Bible from anybody being able to use it in social society or in government. They were very much just trying to understand how the world worked according to the structure that God created. They didn't understand string theory. They didn't understand quantum mechanics. So for them, the world seemed older. For them, animals seemed like they decreased and evolved. If you understand how the Bible works and you understand how quantum mechanics and how string theory works, a lot of the stuff that evolution and science teaches you guys at the base level kind of falls apart at the higher levels because they're not consistent, because they're missing that. The reason why they're missing that is because they're not willing to look above there. So they lose out on the fact that we didn't exist in time and space. Most of the world didn't exist in time and space. Time and space, little quantum bubbles, can and do exist in the universe. They're a very rare occurrence, but that's part of the fact that they're tied to a creator who uses them strategically. So planets are isolated from us. There's a reason why we're separated by light years. There's a reason why by the time we try to even get to a planet, we won't affect the population that's speaking to us in terms of light. And one that's partially for our own benefit. It keeps certain beings from catching up to us. Because we don't need some of those old ones to reach Earth yet. stop trying to help them get here quicker by sending shortwave messages. Because again, these beings can transfer themselves through waves of energy. It hurts them probably. I would say that it's probably not pleasant to go and change yourself from one state of energy and matter to another. To force yourself to maintain that consistency through time and space when you don't have a presence there. To force a hole through time and space when you shouldn't be able to. It's probably a little bit harder than we think as human beings, since we just exist. They don't just exist. They have to hold themselves together. Unless they are in God's will, then they don't. But the fallen ones do. The fallen ones have a lifeline. They're mortal in a sense. They're immortally mortal. So, those who don't want to give up, they're holding on. They have not given up. They'd rather die than submit to this new world. And that's plenty of where Christians are at right now. A lot of people do not want what the left wants. And as many of you Christians are just like, oh, just give up, move on. Nobody said that you have to try to go and fight Babylon. You guys are wrong. A lot of people have the Spirit of God in them, and that is what's causing them to not want to accept this. There's a reason why Christians joined with the Conservative Party, because they thought the Conservatives would actually do a damn thing for them. To actually maybe stop their nation changing. Conserve, a mistake it's a reasonable mistake. Republic, we started a nation as a republic so that we can use democracy to elect our representatives, but, the Republican Party now has kind of changed a lot from that and modified. So it makes sense that when somebody showed up, it seemed like he was going to shake things up while still maintaining the status quo of the old world, the world that still affirms God, still affirms that God created nations, that he can be put over nations, his spirit can lead nations, his angels can lead nations. That's kind of an important thing to not just shovel to the side. But for those who only worship this world and worship God as a side attachment and accessory in this world, it makes sense. So we're going to leave here at the end of chapter 1. We're going to pick up with chapter 2 next time. To leave you guys with the beginning of it, we're going to give you guys a preface, a little bit of a preview of chapter 2. In those days, Matthias, the son of John, the son of Simon, one who hears, a priest of the sons of Yareb from Jerusalem, dwelt in Modin, and he had 5 sons, Yonan, called Caddis, Simon, called Thassi, and these are the Greek names, Judas, who is called Maccabeus, Eleazar, called Avaran, and Yonan, whose surname was Aphias. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judea and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore I am born to see the misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there. When it was delivered unto the hands of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hands of strangers. Her temple has become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with sword of the enemy. What nation hath not a part in her kingdom, and gotten of her spoils? All of her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she has become a bondslave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste, and the Gentiles are profaning. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? Then Matthias and his sons rent their clothes. They ripped their clothes apart and put on sackcloth, which is just basically rags. Basically a wife beater, boxers, and some sweatpants. Sorry, I needed to take a second. Throat sore. And mourned very sore. They wept and grieved. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compiled the people into revolt, came unto the city of Modin to make them sacrifice. So, during this time, while they're in extreme grieving, the big boys are rolling in. Antichrist boys are rolling in. Are you boys sitting here doing your holy services? Are you wearing your mask? We told you guys, you're not supposed to be open right now and have large gatherings. That's against the rules. So, they're making them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Matthias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Matthias, on this wise, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in the city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore, come first, and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all of the heathen have done. Ye, I like how I messed up and said brethren instead of heathen. Funny, because he probably said brethren instead of heathen. Matthias probably knew the truth, though. Anyways, had done. Ye, and the men of Judea also, and such as remain in Jerusalem, shalt thou also and thy house be in the number of the king's friends. And thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. So, this is sweetening the deal, you know. You come in, you stop worshiping, you follow the law and don't open up and have large gatherings, then we'll reward you, but won't take your tithes. You can have, actually, government aid, because we're closed down. We'll give you government aid. Because, you know, other churches have submitted, other pastors have submitted to the New World Order. They've submitted to the COVID rules, you know. So we should, while strip clubs are open, while malls are open, while restaurants are open, while literally everything that suits the world empire is allowed to be open. Almost as if they're priming you guys for something. You, who were willing to sell out everybody else of your faith for a little bit of time so that you can wait for your disappearance act. Then Matthias answered and spake with a loud voice, Through all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments. Yet I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinance. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. Not on the right nor the left. We stay in the center of Christ, on the cross. We who stay in the center will not listen to the conservatives just because they tell us we're now supposed to listen to them. Any more than the left have the right to change our ordinance and laws. It doesn't matter if you come from the left or the right. You will not change the Bible. You will not change God's people. And if you do it, you're going to have to take us by the sword. That's how that works. It's not talking about insurrection. We're not talking about us fighting you. You came to us. We didn't want this fight. We just wanted to help people. You came at us and told us to change how we helped people. That's on you. We just want to try to help people the way we want to try to help people when we're taught. You are the ones who want to change what we were taught to do. To change how we were raised. That's on you. We didn't do that. We, every step of the way, have been holding back. Because if some of the nation's Christians really were as intolerant, as radical, and as violent as you all constantly treat us, and act like we're so vengefully desiring power as you all act like, as you all actually are, you all would never exist. Your pleasures, your luxuries, your irreligiousness would not be able to exist. You exist because of grace and mercy, because God does not allow his people to actually be like you, even if they tried. And that's something we have to finally accept about ourselves too as Christians. We're not like the world. We're not of the world. We're not. So the things that are hard for us to accumulate and assimilate into our culture, it's because it's not meant to be in there. We're meant to be isolated units. It doesn't mean that we don't accept other people or other faiths or other cultures. It means that we exist in spite of them. They do whatever they want to do. We do what we do. We go our own way. We just want to be left alone to help people who want to leave the things that feel like they've trapped them, whether that's other religions or other people. We aren't there to stop other faiths. We are there to save people from those faiths who are miserable in them. If somebody's miserable as a Buddhist, they should not be forced into Buddhism just because it's politically correct, not to show them something other way out other than atheism. Let them go to Christianity. Let us speak to them. If you're Hindu and you want to get out, let us speak to you. If you're traumatized by what happened to you in Islam, let us speak to you. That's just. That's righteousness. That's good. To say that that's wrong is evil. And for us to say that we have to stop them and destroy these people and, we gotta destroy social. No. Let socialism and socialists exist in America so that we can help people who have been corrupted by it. So they can realize, you know what, I'm kind of okay with it. Or better yet, realize that we gave them the idea of socialism. Marx was a Jewish person who had a bone to pick with the Old Testament and this type of stuff. And so he decided that he wanted to try to prevent it from ever happening. The whole idea of socialism was to lead into globalism. That's why many people who are socialists refuse to listen to the fact that there is globalism. In fact, for them, okay, and it's better than capitalism. Once there's a world government, capitalism won't exist. Which makes no sense because every time socialists try to enact their economy, they lapse into capitalism in order to make up for the defects that exist in socialism applied to macroeconomics. Socialism can exist in microeconomics because it's a substitution of economics. It's not an economic structure unto itself, and it's not a way to drive industry by itself. It is a substitution for industry, and it is a substitution for goods and for economic benefit. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be allowed to exist in a nation. It means it's strategically applied to a nation to then benefit the nation, and where it doesn't, you don't. Just like capitalism, everything's just a tool. You use tools in a toolbox. I don't understand why we only have 2 goddamn tools. We only have socialism and capitalism? Really? Nobody thought of any other economic structure? No other economic system? Hell, we have at least serfdom, which is a little bit more useful. In certain applications, that's even more macroeconomics, though. I mean, microeconomical, though. Again, these are all applicable in little places. So again, it's not weird that we get these weird offshoots of ideologies and cultures and things. These exist to become tools for societies to then express the will of God or their gods. Because again, there's a war between the sons of light versus the sons of darkness. So as for me and my kids, screw the king. Now, when he had left speaking these words, there came out of one of the Jews, in the sight of all the sacrifice on the altar, which was at Malden, according to the king's commandment. Which thing, when Matthias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. And this is called back over, I think, honestly, to the time of Moses, because a similar incident happened where somebody was worshiping a false idol, and one of them lost their crap and slew the guy. And technically, yeah, that is murder, but it's considered in a sense, it is a murder to preserve the integrity of the people, in a sense that it is not wrong to murder to defend people from those who seek to oppress them, from those who seek to force them and others to submit. And insofar as others are willing to then help those forces by selling out other people, then those people should be held accountable as well. Now, in the modern times, that should be done legally. In the case of the Nuremberg trials, we persecuted all of those who sold other people to the Nazis. Well, other than people like George Soros, who funds half of the left, he got away from the Nuremberg trials, and yet was involved quite heavily and benefited. Most of his wealth comes actually from dead Jews. He personally went and sold out his own people, and then took their wealth with his uncle. So, yeah. There are people who sell up their own, who then get by on that. That was one of those people, and when Matthias saw him, he slew him. That was probably pretty not good in the eyes of the Greeks. and his reins trembled, neither that he could forbear to show his anger according to the judgment. Therefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. So he slayed the unbeliever on the altar. That was defiled already. So, I mean, at this point, the altar's already defiled. Now it's defiled by the blood of heathens and the innocent. Also the king's commissioner, who had compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time. And the altar he pulled down. So he's slaying every spirit. The spirit of submission. He's killing the spirit of false prophecy. He's slaying everybody left and right, tossing down aisles. Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phineas did unto Zombri, the son of Salom. And it's funny, you know, because Salom means peace. So the grandson of the guy who was born to peace was the one who was willing to compromise the faith of the entire people at the time when it was most necessary that they hold their crap together. He was most willing to sell out his people when they really needed to band together. So thus he dealt zealously for the law, like as Phineas did to Zombri. So I'm telling you, dude, or not the grandson, but the son of peace. There we go. Sorry. I'm tired. I've been up since 6 in the morning. Leave me alone. And Matthias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left all that ever they had had in that city. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children, and their wives and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. Now when it was told the king's servants and the host that it was at Jerusalem, in the city of the beloved, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down the secret places in the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them, and made war against them on the Sabbath day. And they said unto him, Let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth, and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. Serve the Antichrist, and you will be allowed to be a church. But they said, the people of God, we will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they stone at them, nor stopped at the places where they lay hid, but said, Let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully. So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them, with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. Now when Matthias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, If we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives in laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. And at that time therefore they decreed, saying, Whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against them, neither will we die all, as our brethren that were numbered in the secret places. Then came there unto him a company of Essenes, who were mighty men of Isreal, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the law. So these were men who, regardless of what the Antichrist said, whatever other Christians said, they followed the Bible. They were shepherds of Melchizedek. And these shepherds, they were ready to fight. And also all they that fled from the persecution, joined themselves unto them. And they were a stay unto them, a force. And as they joined forces, they smote sinful men in their anger, and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathen for succor. So basically, these people, these true believers, they get pissed. Neither the right nor left. We don't care. We're coming for that butt. We're holding everybody to an account. You all forsake the Bible. You all are willing to compromise who Christ is. You all are willing to sell God out for pleasures of this world, whether it's for the conservatives or the liberals. It doesn't matter. You need to be dealt with, And so, yes, we did debate. Because again, this is murder in that time. We're not murdering people. We're debating people. Whosoever calls a man a fool murdered that man. So for us, murder as a Christian is different. It doesn't mean for us murdering people, we go out and kill people in the flesh. We're talking about murdering people's spirits by telling them they're stupid, by telling them they're sinning, by telling them they're doing things that are killing them inside. That's murder. That's killing the flesh. That's killing their soul so that they can live. We murder people in debate and discourse so that they can live. And those who aren't willing to do debate and discourse, who aren't willing to defend the faith and defend the hope that exists for other people to live when they're dead and blind and in bondage, well, then you are willing to sell people out so that they can live in enslavement. And these are the people who need to be dealt with by people who are truly willing to actually bring hope into life, who are willing to bring dreams into fruition, who are willing to bear the kingdom into reality, who are willing to share the inheritance of God with those who are undeserving, because even while they were enemies of God, God sent his son to die for them. Even though they refused to believe, even though they refused to see, even in these times, which are coming true, the biblical times are coming true before our eyes, and yet they still won't see. Well, we still are here to share the inheritance. That's why we fight for America. It's not about us having a kingdom for us. It was about having a place so that they can come to faith in an earnest way, not by forcing them by the sword to believe in God, but by giving them a place where they can look left and right and go, I don't want to worship other gods. They suck. I'd rather be an atheist and then find the true God and then have the true God revealed to me. That is exactly where you should be. You should want to know the true God rather than any other God. You should want to be interested in religion unless you have a true religion revealed to you. But make sure then it's the true faith. So America's already where it needs to be for another reformation. It's believers who refuse to do the work of God and share their inheritance, who do this curse to us, who allow us all to fall. I don't even blame the heathen. It's not an unbeliever's fault that we fall. They don't know what they do. They don't know what they do to us. We barely even know what we do to ourselves. I blame us. I blame our willingness to sacrifice America for the sake of our own pleasure. You are desiring your own pleasures for the next decade over the legacy of all of the inheritance of every American of Christ's blood into their hearts, their minds, their bodies, and their souls, so that sinners like me could be saved. You guys are willing to sacrifice my possible salvation and other people's salvation and their blindness because you all are scared. That's on you. The believer's unbelief is on them. This is on you. The cowardice. The unwillingness to stand up for them. Or for yourselves. You won't even stand up for yourselves, yet alone for others. That's the worst. We stand by and let other people suffer. We give them scraps. We give them less than what we give dogs. Well, we exalt ourselves and pat ourselves on the back for doing works of the flesh and circumcision of the flesh, while ignoring that of the greater circumcision of the Spirit. The works of the Spirit are worth more than that which dies with our passing. That which is not connected to who we are as people, who we are as an individual, but that which we do as a collective, as the spirit of humanity. That matters more. And that's why it affects us more. That's why the works of Marx or the works of freaking people like Hobbes live on. While the stupid ass memes that were published during the Revolutionary War are never read today. Nobody's reading the stuff that was memed back then. Nobody's going to read the stuff that's memed now because it has no legacy to the grand spirit of humanity, and it has no truth. So lacking both, it won't last long. And if at least it has one, then at least it will last long enough for that generation or the people to die off. But that's it. Then it's gone. Unless it's brought back from the grave like a freaking demon. Like an undead thing that's not supposed to be alive, and likewise consumes all of the living before it. There's a reason why the original Rob Zombie film, wait, was it Rob Zombie? I don't remember the guy's name, but zombie films were written based around criticisms of capitalism, of a dead ideology being beaten and forced to live like Frankenstein, and is ripping apart the flesh of everyone it is forced itself upon. It is a zombie. The capitalism that people hate is the undead capitalism that was murdered when the World War happened. World War I killed capitalism. The Great Depression killed capitalism. What little bit of legitimacy was left after the freaking monopolies started running into town. Laissez-faire capitalism is a very, very small thing. Just like socialism, it's very fallible. It only exists in microeconomies. As a macroeconomy, it cannot consist itself. You need something stronger. So the ebbing and flowing towards a one world order is because nothing can ever replace God. God allows us to switch between capitalism and socialism like that, to create a system that's higher than either. That isn't just a compromise between the both, that is then forced upon everybody else. There's either up, side to side, or down. We like staying side to side so we don't look up or down. That's fine. Doesn't mean up or down doesn't exist. It means you're looking at the horizon, but you ain't looking at the clouds for what the horizon is actually illuminated by. So we're going to read the rest of chapter 2. But that's your preview. And the second part is kind of getting into the idea of the situation we're in right now. It is not some rebuke against Christians that they were denied a second term. It was never about the works of the flesh. That is a fleshly work. That is the works of he, the church, not she, the church. The bride is supposed to be sitting there preparing in case things go to crap. So the world is already expected to go to crap. The he is supposed to stand up. The son of Israel is supposed to fight. The sons of Israel are supposed to stand up. But the daughters of Israel are supposed to preserve themselves. They're supposed to prepare. They fight too. Oh, trust me, the women and children fought back, and they were all murdered by the Antichrist. So the churches will fight back. But it's the culture war first. The church isn't supposed to get involved in the culture war the same way that people get involved in the culture war. The lame person fights the culture war. The pastors lead the culture war in terms of motivating, putting hope, dreams, and direction and edification over the people. You guys are the generals. This is a war. And this is why we're launching the Messiah Corps. Because we need to be able to look at the war for what it is. We need to be able to handle whether we're still flawed or even if we're sanctified. And for those who are sanctified, you need to get into the Messiah Corps because we need you. I'm working my way towards sanctification right now, but I still sin. I still have shortcomings. Even though I'm trying to work my way towards becoming a pastor, I'm a long way off even on that because I'm still trying to go through schooling. So I'm working through my path to get to a position where I'll have the authority over people and have the credit behind it because I'll be able to show that my life has shown those fruits. But I've been a sinner for a long time, more than I've been saved. For those of you who've been saved for a long time, we need you. You are the ones who are going to be the biggest relief, uplifting, and help during these times. And yeah, you may not want to jump in and become a Republican. You don't have to. It's not about the right or the left. Neither left nor right. I serve Christ. And you all should too. These people are just people who help us from time to time because they got mutual griefs with the people who are overtly trying to murder us and force us to submit. So we debate and we discourse. But we better be ready to debate and discourse the right and the left. Because remember, we're not hitting people with swords that are actual metal. We're hitting them with the sword of the Spirit. We're using the shield of faith to defend against these attacks. And when they're trying to murder us, they murder us in debate and discourse. They destroy our faith. They destroy our hope. They destroy our dreams. They destroy our willingness to obey. To obey what we know is right. To obey our instinct. To obey the order of things rather They make us submit to what chaos and confusion makes us. And that's not truth. That's not humanity. That's not even the spirit of humanity. This confusion, this thing where we have anybody can be anything, I could be a dragon. Yeah, no. I ain't no dragonkin. And y'all shouldn't be either. If we're gonna be any kind of kin, let's be dovekin. Let us be sheepkin. But God forbid, let us not be anything close to a dragon or a fairy or whatever. Because I've heard some pretty crazy stuff there on Tumblr. And some people actually are willing to exalt that because at this point it doesn't really matter. Gender is just a social construction. Funny, the social constructionists say the old things are social constructions so they can socially construct social constructions to rule people through. Almost as if these things, through science and, rhetoric, these things were created almost only to destroy and repurpose, not create anything. Almost like they kind of have a spirit over them and how we use them. Oh yeah, because the devil's called the spirit of the accuser, which means the devil's really good at debate, which means the devil's really good at discourse, which means the devil's really smart, which means the devil knows a lot of things about everything, which means the devil is an idiot and neither are any of his freaking legions. So the fact that you think that any of the supernatural things are idiots, yet alone unable to teach us anything, flies in the face of the books that you guys use to then not believe. Because again, the Book of Enoch spends an entire chapter teaching you all basically of how science was created. How alchemy was created was through the Book of Enoch. That's why Kabbalistic rabbinicism links their rituals and their mythology and the whole idea of the Sephiroth and all these other weird things. That all is linked to the Book of Enoch. That's why we don't worship it or use it, because oftentimes when we start waving it out to just any old person, they start diving off the goddamn deep end and doing crazy crap to other people who don't deserve to have horrible crap done to them. So we have the only books in the Bible for you guys, the books you guys distrust us because we fine-tuned them all and we left other books out. No, we didn't. We put books in there to keep you all from going insane. And we kept all the books that make people go insane out. And we keep you guys from them. Because only people who have taken the time to learn this should be exposed to the stuff that drives you insane. That's important. That's not us being disingenuous. That's anybody with a half-ass pastoral degree trying to protect the average person from being basically brain melted. We're trying to help you guys. So don't distrust us because the pastors who then come afterwards don't understand that enough to tell you it. They didn't know. They specifically went out of their way during the 50s and 60s to explain all of this stuff to believers. If you look into the stuff that they were making back then, people like C.S. Lewis, they all referenced this stuff. This was not mystery to anybody but people in the 80s and 90s who were too busy doing drugs while their parents were being conformist. The same crap we do now. Nothing's changed under the sun. So this misunderstanding that we form, all that stuff is foolishness. And it's unwise. And there is no wisdom in it. And that's the thing that has to be told to people. That's what we have to tell ourselves. Because once you tell yourself that, you start freeing yourself from everything that you've been lying to yourself to accept. Because we lie to ourselves a lot to accept a reality that should not exist. To accept circumstances and things that we do to ourselves and to others that should never be done. We all sin and fall short of the glory of Christ that He has intended for us to share in Him through His blood and through His Spirit. So with that, and because we're kind of leveling off at a good lovely little 130, I leave that with you guys. Chapter 1, a nice good long tirade about current events and a little bit of edifying. We're not perfect. You shouldn't be trying to be perfect. If we were perfect, we wouldn't be in a sinful nation. The point of us existing in a sinful nation is to be an example. So we have to have Christians who fall short in order to make sinners realize they can be Christians too and fall short of the glory of Christ and still not be forsaken into hell because, oh, I had a cigarette, or oh, I had a beer, or oh, I had sex out of wedlock. People shouldn't be condemned to hell over those things because those things happen all the damn time. Because there are things that literally go out of their way to make sure we're conditioned to do them. We are indoctrinated into making the sins that we do. We're not held accountable to them. We're only held accountable once we wake up to the indoctrination or have the ability to wake up to the indoctrination and choose to stay in it. When you have the ability to get out and you stay in because it's too hard to get out, that's when you're held accountable. That's when you're sinning. That's when you're disobeying God. Up until then, you're just a blind-ass person running around blind. Pardon my cursing. It is not fair to judge unbelievers the way that they are. They're unbelieving. They have no reason to believe to do right. Why? If they did, they'd probably get themselves killed. There's a reason why wisdom to the unbeliever is foolishness to us. Our wisdom is foolishness to them. It's because the inversion of the soul happens with the introduction of the blood of Christ. Christ, again, referencing Kabbalistic ideas, blood is a transmutative substance. It is the bonding between the organic and the spiritual. It is literally the physical meets spiritual. Blood is a metaphysical force. That's why when you drink blood or you partake in the blood of animals, you are submitting and transmuting things into your body from the spiritual world. Whether it's from the animal's bare essence, this is why if you drink certain blood of like bears and things like that, you're said to get the strength of a bear or the wisdom of an owl, things like that if you eat certain animals and stuff. But more than that, if you sanctify them and use them for a purpose, that then sanctifies that being that is then using it. If you use an owl's blood and you drink the owl's blood and you sanctify the owl's blood first to Athena, that's going to do something very different. And I probably shouldn't have told people things like that. I don't want to hear people killing owls. That would be really fragged. But again, the cult of Moloch is out there and they do this stuff like that. Because again, the cult of Moloch has ties to the cult of Athena as well in modern days. The thing is that while these religions were separate at one point, through the one world order, all of the gods and goddesses then realign to put their different providential differences aside to fight against the people of God. This is why they say in the book of the sons of light versus the sons of darkness, and in Revelations, and in various places in the Bible, biblical books, and Apocrypha, that all of the gods and goddesses, all of the various religions will unify and fight against God's people and try to kill us all, and in the process destroy the goddamn world. I don't understand how anybody missed any of that while they were running away from the faith by reading any of the Apocrypha, which tells you that right there in the text. Unless you guys just didn't decide to, I don't know, use Google to read anything about the references that they were making. That's what frustrates me. That people like me exist and go Alex Jones status because other people force us to have to do research we really should not be doing. Because they don't want to do it. I should not be exposing myself to half the things I expose myself to, but I do it because if somebody were to come up to me half sideways saying, well, what does the Dead Sea Scrolls say? Well, you know what? I will show you. We got it. Oh, wait, no, it's upstairs. Oh, no. We got it right here. So you want to go and run at me half-ass, talking about you know what this says? No, you don't. I have it right here. Not some freaking online translation like I used to read when I was 13. An actual version that cost money and was actually written by scholars. You want to have scholarly research? Here you go. You want scholarly research? Here you go. You want scholarly research? Here you go. This is a King James version. And you want to know why the scholars were able to pull this and know that this is accurate? I don't know. Maybe because this is accurate! Nobody changed anything! Freaking stupid. It's the stupidest freaking argument I've ever freaking heard, and it's literally... It's only done by people who refuse to do it, because if the same people who say it aren't going to pick up this and actually go for the work of reading both at the same damn time. I have. You ever tried reading 4 Bibles at once? It's kind of annoying. Just to check for a translation error to make sure that it actually exists? Even more annoying. Because that's not a 5-minute research thing just to make sure somebody just is too lazy to do it themselves. That's an hour to find out you all are too lazy to do it. That's an hour plus, actually. Because I gotta do freaking translation work, which means I gotta go and then first find out what the original Greek and Hebrew was. Then I have to go and reference it back. Then I gotta go and actually study the damn history of the time frame. Then I have to go and reference it with other religious histories and other cultural histories. I do all this stuff. So when I sit there and I ramble on, I'm doing this for you, so you all don't ask questions. You wonder that's why preachers just talk to you all and tell you things. You all get talked to because you all put yourselves in the positions that you're in. Believer or unbeliever, whether you were of the faith or left it. You are in the position you are in with your pastors because you refuse to be on the same level as your pastors. I have no problem walking up to any of my pastors and talking to them for hours about our faith. And they're okay with it because for them, it's actually a relief. I don't have to teach somebody something and act like they don't know something. Holy crap, somebody knows something about our faith. I did my job. It's actually a pleasing thing to find out you did your job and that somebody is pursuing the faith of their own volition and learning about it in a way that puts them on the same level as you without having to go for the same level of scholarly training. That's an amazing thing for them to accomplish, and they love it when they can do that in the lives of others. So you all should encourage yourself to be on that level and to be scholars of the word and of theology and know apologetics. That kind of stuff is important. And it's a relief. And it reserves them to be able to do better things like, I don't know, actually following the sacrifices and not spending their entire time lecturing people about what love is. Maybe all the problems we have with our faith, maybe all the problems people have with us are caused by the fact that we won't even do the basic groundwork ourselves to make sure that we are edified, discerned, and prepared to then make it easier for people who refuse to do the work to actually shut the hell up and just trust us. Because nobody trusts us, nobody will listen to us. Because nobody will listen to us, they fall on deaf ears and their own swords, while we sit there and weep for them, and they think that we're sitting there mocking them. If we want to stop that, then we need to change ourselves. I'm working on my process, but again, I come from a fragged background. I'm not going to be perfect instantly. You guys can't look to people like me to make things perfect, to make the world right. It's up to all of us, one step at a time, like the book says. All I can do for you guys is get my own personal life together so I can keep making videos like this. So I can keep doing what is actually holding me together to be able to be the person that I know I need to get myself to be a long time ago. But I should have been there years ago, and maybe we wouldn't be in the position here, talking on this forum like this. I probably would have handled things a lot differently. But you know something? I would never have gotten here had there not been real Christians willing to sacrifice their blood, flesh, and lives, and property to lift me out of the fucking low places I was in my life, and the deceptions and lies I was in. This is me now. Well, I mean, the Holy Spirit's here, but I mean, in the sense that reading earlier is the Holy Spirit. Now I'm getting vulgar. This is where you can tell the difference between whether or not I'm talking for God or just talking from my own heart. The heart of God is different from my own heart. And there are plenty of things I disagree with him with my own heart still. Again, I'm working my own faith out. So when I read, I try very hard to only read when I'm reading from his heart. And I try to not let our hearts merge too much. But to do that, I have to deny a part of myself that is becoming Christ-like, that is becoming like my Lord, that is becoming like a person who I've always been meant to be more like, and who I already had elements of in me, because I was always destined to be a believer. That's how election works. Election doesn't work in a sense that, oh, there are some elected and some aren't. It's that all are elected, most ignore the call. Election is about accepting that which was already placed over you, the authority over your own life, to make it right or to let it be wrong. We let our lives be wrong for so long, and plenty of people in trying to live their lives right are wrong in how they lived it right. And other people who have lived their life wrong have been right in how they lived their life wrong, because they were faced with oppressions and evils and things that made them into people who they should never have become had they lived in a world that wasn't a piece of crap. We are in the position we're in because circumstances and reality exist, baby. So we have to look at things with a realistic lens. Christ is not so human that he's not realistic. He created the reality that we're in so that people who are less human than God can be human still without submitting and losing themselves. We are lesser humans than God is. God is a higher human than we are. And all of the angels and gods and goddesses, they're not even human at all. So we look to beast to rule over us, not animals. Again, we force animals to serve us, much like the angels force us to serve under them. But they're the real beast, the angels are. And they're the ones who prescribed and created the beast that we deal with in the world and set them against us. And we are being molded under the images of angels who themselves acknowledge the fact that they're beasts and animals and that they are nothing like us, which are created in the image of God. The Bible makes it clear how all this stuff works out, baby. You guys got to figure out that stuff by having the ears to hear, the eyes to see, the spirit open and willing to receive. You got to have your vessel willing to be filled. And you got to get your properties right. You got to get these impurities out of us, because we might be called to service. We might be called to the debate. We might be called to the discussion forum. You can't just sit there and be silent while your own kind are being murdered in the Word. If you don't know enough, learn. Who would have thought? I don't know enough to speak. Well, maybe you should learn the language. I'm sorry. It seems pretty clear to me how this stuff works out, but I was used to be an atheist and I used to be an agnostic, so questioning things and figuring things out was kind of where I came from. I guess maybe you guys really are just as, I don't know, conformist as apparently I was raised to believe you guys were. I don't know. I saw a different side to Christianity. That's why I converted. But it seems to me like maybe I just was introduced to the right kind of Christians at the right time. Maybe God really does exist and he was really steering me away from everybody else in Christianity who were willing to deal with this and accept this. But I'm sorry. Their conformity is not something that is biblical, nor is it something tolerable, nor palatable to anybody, saved or unsaved. It's an extremely unpalatable and distasteful conformity. And I'm not talking about conformity to the world even, or not even to the world or even to the faith. I'm talking about conformity of self. Who are you? What are you? Who do you serve? These are the questions I ask myself all the time, and it's given me a lot more of a focus of what I don't want to be and where I need to get away from. But what are you guys doing in that kind of regard? It seems to me like who am I, what am I, is just I'm a Christian, I go and I do my thing, and God's gonna love me, and I can't wait till the rapture. Look, that doesn't help. It's not helping anybody. I fear for my mother, because as much as she has suffered and given for Christianity, my biggest fear with her is that it's going to be other Christians who get her to be willing to conform. Because other Christians' compromises will get her to let down her guard. And ironically enough, that makes me want to be more radical, largely just to make sure my mother is protected in her faith. Because she's the only reason why our family even has Christianity held in right now. She's locking it down for us all. getting all the prayers down for every single one, whether we're believers or not. Her and her sisters and her mother, all the women in our family are holding down this family in prayer. So, I mean, for me, it matters. If they are forced to compromise their faith because other people are just too ass-backwards lazy to do the damn research, and so they lie to people that I love, who put everything in their lives into their hopes and dreams, and to try to help other people in worse positions than them. I will not let you people manipulate them, and I will not let you people manipulate others. Your conformity and your willingness to just deal with it because you might get by, you might benefit, no. People need to stand up to that, whether it's left or right, and I'll stand with both. I think at this point, I have and will and am showing it. I just didn't do too much publicly and I didn't make too much of a loud stand about it, but I'm willing to. And a large part of it is because I'm willing to go down with the ship. Not Trump. Who cares? Trump goes down. Trump goes down, God's still going to keep fighting. He's going to pick a new fighter. And it's going to be a new type of message being fought with, and a new type of revelation for the country to learn and possibly repent over. But if they don't, then they're going to get another leader to fight against until we are squashed. And then once our faith is forced into there and America finally is assumed into Babylon, fine. Hope you guys had fun in your churches, singing and praising nothing. Singing and praising the fall of everything around you because you guys are so happy with the apocalypse coming about. Fight for something worth living in. Heaven is worth living in only if we have as many human beings in it as possible. If you and your family are the only people in heaven, that's going to be miserable. Heaven is everybody in humanity or no one. That's how we should be looking at it as Christians. All or nothing. Like God does. He wants every single human redeemed. He knows he won't get all of them, but he's going to try anyways. No matter how hard we try to fight him. No matter how hard you try to fight him. So Holy Spirit, I just ask that you guide us. You give us peace, clarity. You give us focus. That you deal with our anger and our spite and our wrath, and you channel it and you put it to right use. That you put it to biblical use, so that we are not just murderers, slanderers, and manipulators like our enemies, like the heathens around us, and like those who choose to be like the heathen, who pretend to worship your faith. And even I fall short. I am a heathen still. But I want my spirit to be of Christ. Though I am physically a heathen, I want to be a believer. I want to be better every day. And there are plenty out there who don't know it yet. But they are in the same position, Lord, and they just need to see that you're reaching down to us, that you're speaking to us in a language we can hear and in a real way that is able to lift us out of the death and bondage that we have accepted in our lives and over those we love and those we hate. Show us a whole new world, because it's not just about who we love being changed. It's about who we hate being changed more than who we love. For who we hate being changed might make who we love hate us. And we must be willing to accept that. That because we are willing to die for those who have forsaken us and who have hurt us and who hate us, those who love us will look at us less, will respect us less, and they will sin against us because we did the right thing by those who don't deserve it. That's the frag thing. Because living in reality, while living in Christ, is a lot harder than living in a fantasy. And living in reality, well, being an atheist, is a lot different than living in the fantasy that there is nothing supernatural, there is nothing extraordinary about the world that you live in, and about the things that you are just ignoring that go on around you every single day. Both sides are wrong. The only way in the middle, the only way for the middle to be right, is for you to go down the middle while actually making sure you know where the other two paths led and where they came from. Otherwise, you are just going as off track as anybody else. We're all a little bit blind. Some of us are getting the scales off, but we are all a little bit blind. And I'll tell you, There are some believers who know less than unbelievers, and there are some unbelievers who do not know a goddamn thing. Which one are we? Because I'm still pretty damn ignorant. I told you guys the other day, I know maybe 3-5% of everything that there is to know about theology and apologetics. 3%. And that's from 3 years. I will not be able to learn enough in my lifetime to be able to communicate it. Everything of the faith, everything about Christianity, everything that actually exists in reality about Christianity. It's impossible. There's no way to do it. And that's even if I could get the mysteries even communicated to me by the Lord. He only shows me a lot during his seasons. Then like last season, I get nothing. Ebbs and flows, dispensations. These things matter. And if you don't care, then yeah, it's easy to not believe. It's easy to not care. Not believing and not caring are two low energy ways of living your life. And it's pretty low energy for those of you who believe in spiritual energy levels and things like that, and your karma and your auras and stuff. Well, it's pretty low energy. It's pretty low chakra flow. You're not using as much as you really could be using. You're not bringing in as much as you really could be bringing in. So it's easier, less output, less input. You're not going to suffer as much. And that's fine. You know, honestly, I'm envious of that. And honestly, a lot of Christians probably could do for that. Probably calm us down a little bit to keep us from losing our damn minds. Hell, probably calm down a lot of atheists too. And agnostics. A lot of us probably just need to have low energy sometimes in that sense. So that we just tune out a lot of the things that we take in. But that also wouldn't be living in reality. And it also wouldn't be right. And it also wouldn't be acknowledging what exists around us for what it truly is. So, you're right in a small sense. Missing so much. What is the trade-off? Depends on you guys. Have fun with that. I know what the weight and scales are for me and what I can physically tolerate. Because that's the game. Mentally, you may say, I want all this. I want the whole truth. I want to pursue nothing but the truth. And everything but the truth. That's fine. For your mind, your body might have no damn clue nor desire for it, though. And if it doesn't, you won't. And if you want to accept this little reality, like I used to, and like I have and even still do, but you're not built for it, you will never be able to be in that little box. You will never be able to form. And when you try, you will lose so much of yourself, you'll become less. So you might as well just accept this for what it is. That's the dilemma I'm in. That's why I say, don't follow my path. I'm in this box. I can't be in this box. Some of you are in this box and don't want to be in this box and want to be in here. I want to be in here. I want to be like you guys and just low energy, not worry about everything. God's got it. God will figure it out. That would be nice. Simple Christianity would be great for me. It's just not who I am. It's not what I'm built for. It wasn't even what I was built for as a non-believer. I could never be in that little box. Accepting that is probably the most freeing thing and probably the only thing that allows me to finally get over myself. If I try to keep forcing myself in that box, I will never move on. So you need to figure out where you're at in the flesh and in the mind and in the spirit. You need to figure it all out for yourself. Then come to people like me and ask. Because then we can actually help you. You're not getting help and you're not getting answers because we don't know how to help you. What are we supposed to answer? The freaking, God, the 50,000 mysteries of Yahweh? Okay. Where do you want to start? What chapter? Like, come on. You can't expect somebody to do all of it for you. You can't expect people to be the example for you for something that's supposed to be real. If it's supposed to have any sort of frame of reference or reality to it, then nothing should be certain. That's the most certain thing out of all of it. The uncertainty. So we have to remember that, you guys. The uncertainty of it all, just like a cut for the audio feed. The uncertainty of it all is actually what makes you more and more certain. And once you change from that world to the spirit sense, you start becoming comfortable with uncertainty. It's the certainty that makes you uncomfortable because you feel trapped. I'm not telling you which side to be on. I'm just telling you how I'm living my life and how God's working through me on it. So in terms of that little tidbit, this is me talking about how my experiences are working out and trying to give advice on from that point. So take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Don't fault the rest of us who don't. Just please, don't. And when we have faith in something and you guys don't fault us for it. Did you read the chapter? Did you read the book? Did you give a damn? Did you fellowship with us at all? Did you listen to anything that we said? No? Okay, then shut up. It's that simple. And if people kept it that simple, we wouldn't be in the position we're in. But none of us are keeping it simple right now in any of the spheres. So let's not act like it's that simple. And let's not act like for you as an individual, you can somehow magically get your way out of this whole thing in a simple way. As, I don't believe. I'm waiting for proof. Okay, of what? That 2 + 2 = 4? Grab 4 objects and count them. Maybe you'll know that if you separate them into pairs, that's 2 + 2 equaling 4. Division. You can't learn it just in the conceptual sense and then say, well, the concept doesn't exist because I haven't seen evidence of it, when you didn't put the freaking pieces together. Just because you said, I have 2 objects magically become 4, doesn't mean it's going to become 4 in reality. Conceptually, maybe you can dangle a damn theoretical mathematical solution to make 2 objects magically become 4 through morphing something. I bet you there's some mathematician who has figured out that method, and kudos to him. But reality says 2 objects, just standing alone, unless they have some sort of magical interaction that causes them to multiply or divide, will not become 4. You're not going to get the answers unless you put the right pieces together. You need 4 objects, count them, then divide them. You can't start from half of the solution. You can't start from just the ground level looking at the atoms of the world trying to tell you about something that exists outside of atoms. Come on. Make it easier for yourself. Stop trying to fight so hard to ignore something that's just easy to acknowledge. Well, come on. You guys say the sky is blue, but the sky isn't always blue. So stop trying to argue like the sky is always blue. The sky isn't always blue. It's for the properties of the air, for the properties of how light is filtering for the atmosphere. The sky is actually not blue at all. The sky doesn't even exist. Oh, surprising. We don't actually have a sky. We just use sky as a term to refer to the layers of various different particles, fluids, and gases that make up our atmosphere. The sky doesn't exist, which means it can never actually be blue, and the appearance of blue is even more insane to even perceive. That's the sky. And you guys want to know about God. Huh! Understand how insane that is? And the best part is, those of you who then agree with that go, well, it's so insane and so hard for me to understand him, I'm not gonna try. Boy, he came down in human form to tell you he's human. He spends all of his time telling you he's human. And if you just understood that, you would understand how easy it is to understand God, while understanding how hard it is to understand God for what he isn't, but is. Understanding God as a human is extremely easy. He came as Christ, lived and died in the flesh. We murdered him on the cross. Now we receive his blood and his Holy Spirit to lead us. But understand the Holy Spirit, understand the Father. There's a reason why he said, no one knows the Father but through the Son. No one knows the Spirit of God but through the flesh of God. Oh. So, we can only understand God through his humanity. You can't understand God through his alienness. He was never meant to be alien. We are very immoral and inhumane creatures. We massacre entire species of creatures. We call them pests. You get termites in your house, you're not thinking about their freaking individual soul and their freedom and free will. You don't give a rat's ass. You kill them. You're less moral than God is. Two animals who didn't do a damn thing to you other than just have the misfortune of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. You choose to do the things that you do and to exist and to rebel and to do the things you have. And you want to have leviance when you spent your entire life murdering entire species of creatures who have the right to then accuse you? Imagine if they have consciousness like some people believe. Imagine if they really are people's souls being forced to serve out a punishment. Ooh, you think that the guards who are in charge of people in prison shouldn't be in charge of shouldn't be, held responsible if they abuse the people they're in charge of? If you believe prison guards should be held accountable for how they abuse those who are in their charge, yet you believe animals have the souls of human beings in them, and you kill animals all the damn time, how much more guilty are you of murdering human beings than Hitler? By your own religions, you guys condemn yourselves even more. That's why I left them, because it became so infallibly inescapable, the prison that we were in. The only way out was for the one thing nobody was actually willing to tell me could get me out. That's why I'm so hard-sprung on that. This is the way out. It's not the way out in terms of dealing with the immediate struggles of human life. I gotta serve out that term. I'm a sinner. And if I had a past life, I probably did worse. So this is my way towards finally getting done with that cycle of reincarnation. And please, Lord, get me the hell out. I don't want to revive as a fish, or as a freaking termite, or as a damn freaking heron, or as an eagle. I don't care. I don't want to come back as something that gets parasites all the damn time, or gets eaten, or gets ripped apart from the inside out from some God knows disease that we don't get. There's a reason why they live for 5 to 10 to 20 years, while we somehow magically manage to get ourselves to the level of certain animals who really, really don't exist in the same kind of way that other animals do. The long-living whales, the long-living crustaceans, the long-living squids, they don't live like short-term animals do. They don't live the way short-term thinking human beings do. They live like conservatives and like people who plan for eternity do. Huh. For those of you who believe in evolution and science, maybe you should have some little ding-a-ling-a-ling in your ring bells. I don't know. I'm just a stupid freaking believer who knows nothing, can't read, and can't understand reality. That's basically the position we're in. You understand why we exist in the land of Babel right now? And it's only because we choose to. Again, you guys have created a reality that makes no damn sense. And to try to explain it to you guys makes no damn sense. So the only way to make sense of it all is to stop acknowledging this reality and start acknowledging one reality. Then you guys don't have to freak out every time Twitter does something or Trump does something. Again, for all the Christians who were like, oh, it's a rebuke against those Christians who believe in Trump. God wouldn't support somebody like Trump. Well then, why were you guys not having peace for 4 years? If it was the move of God, why were you guys not at peace? Yeah, we weren't at peace, but we were also at war. We were at peace while at war, but we weren't at peace with the war. That's different. You guys should have been at peace the whole entire time. Oh, Trump's elected? Well, you know what? Well, just like with this Antichrist, well, everything's going to be fine. You guys aren't tripping out about Biden. What changed? Suddenly the Antichrist just left? Really? The Antichrist just magically just took a break? Oh, Trump's out of office. We'll give those Christians a break now. I guess I'll take a break. Really? Because, the Trump supporters weren't ignorant enough to believe in something as foolish as that. We knew for a fact that 4 years of Trump meant 4 years of fighting for Christ. Really fighting for him with the veil being removed, which is exactly what happened. We got everything we got, and we got all the validation we did. Our faith is not quaking. It's our faith in our fellow Americans and our fellow Christians that's wavered. It's our faith that maybe, just maybe, we won't be sold out. Go figure, we had a little bit more hope in our fellow Americans. Shame. Shame to have faith that people won't sabotage each other just to get ahead. Stay blessed, shepherds. Stay frosty and watch your butts. Keep praying. We need it. We need every prayer we can